The impossible match. The Velmary homeworld was a place of elegance and control. Towering crystal spires stretched toward the skies, glowing softly under the twin moons. Every structure, every movement, every tradition was built around one sacred principle: harmony. And nothing was more sacred than the soulmate bond. For the Velmary, love was not random. It was determined by a small crystal embedded in their skin from birth. When a Velmary met their perfect match, the crystal would glow, forming a telepathic link between them. It was a bond so rare that only a few ever experienced it in their lifetime. And it was always between two Velmary. At least that was what they had always believed. Until now. The laugh that started it all. Commander Loraya Velray stood at the edge of the Grand Diplomatic Hall, her arms crossed as she watched the humans enter. Their leader, Captain Ethan Carter, was at the front of the group. His posture was relaxed but confident, his gaze sharp and intelligent. Loraya exhaled slowly, already feeling bored. She had never understood the human obsession with emotions. They were loud, unpredictable, and reckless. And the idea that a Velmary could ever bond with a human. Loraya laughed at the thought. A few of her fellow officers turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "Something amusing, Commander," one of them asked. She smirked, nodding toward the human delegation. "The idea that one of them could ever be my match." The others chuckled. "Unthinkable," one of them agreed. "Their minds are so chaotic." Loraya nodded. "Exactly, it's impossible." And then, her soulmate crystal burned with light. The moment everything changed. The room fell silent. The other Velmary stared as Loraya's crystal, the one that had been dormant for her entire life, began to glow. A soft, warm light pulsed from the small gem embedded in her wrist. Loraya's breath caught. Her body tensed. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. She felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest, like something inside her had just shifted. And then she looked up, straight into Ethan Carter's eyes. The human who wasn't supposed to be. Ethan had no idea why everyone was staring at him. 1 second, he had been walking into the meeting. The next, the entire Velmary delegation looked like they had seen a ghost, especially Commander Loraya. Her expression had gone from amused to something that looked dangerously close to panic. Ethan frowned. "Did I do something wrong?" He was about to speak when he saw it, the glowing crystal on her wrist. It was small, barely noticeable, but the light it emitted was unmistakable. And judging by the way everyone else was looking at it, this was a very big deal. The denial. Loraya took a sharp step back, gripping her wrist as if she could force the light to disappear. No, this wasn't real. She was a decorated warrior, a leader, a strategist. And now, her soulmate indicator was pointing at a human. "There has to be a mistake," she muttered, her voice tight. Ethan tilted his head, his hands raised in confusion. Did I do something?" Loraya glared at him. "You did nothing." "Then why does it feel like I just committed a crime?" Loraya clenched her jaw. This was impossible. The soulmate bond had never happened between a Velmary and a human. Never. And she would not be the first. She turned to the others. "Something is wrong. The crystal must be malfunctioning." One of the scientists hesitated. "Commander, the indicators, they do not malfunction." Loraya ignored him. She stormed forward, past Ethan, past the delegation, past the stunned silence. She refused to accept this. She would not accept this. And yet, the moment she passed Ethan, she felt it. A strange, invisible pull. Like something inside her was drawing her back to him. She froze. Her breath hitched. And then she ran. Ethan Carter's problem just got bigger. Ethan watched her leave, still completely lost. The Velmary officers exchanged nervous glances. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Okay, Does anyone want to explain what the hell just happened? Silence. Then one of the Velmeri officials, an older diplomat, stepped forward. His voice was quiet. Captain Carter, do you understand what just occurred? Ethan crossed his arms. Not even a little bit. The official took a deep breath. Commander Luraya has just found her soulmate. Ethan blinked, then laughed. That's funny. I thought you said I was her. His voice trailed off, because the official wasn't joking. The reality hit him like a freight train. Luraya, the same commander who had just laughed at the idea of a human mate, the same woman who looked like she wanted to murder him 10 seconds ago. She was his soulmate. Ethan groaned. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. A bond that shouldn't exist. Commander Luraya Velere paced in her quarters, her mind racing. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. Her soulmate crystal still glowed faintly, pulsing with a warmth she had never felt before. It was supposed to be impossible. Soulmate indicators had existed for thousands of years, but they had always led to another Velmeri. Not a human. Not him. Not Ethan Carter. Luraya exhaled sharply and clenched her fists. She would not accept this. She refused to accept this. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic hall, Ethan Carter had faced a lot of things in his military career. Hostile alien species, deadly space battles, first contact scenarios gone wrong. But never had he faced an entire room of aliens staring at him like he was a glitch in the universe. The Velmeri whispered among themselves, glancing at him with suspicion. The bond must be false. A human. Impossible. He must have tampered with the indicator. Ethan groaned. All right, does someone want to tell me what the hell is going on? An older Velmeri official, Ambassador Valeris, sighed and stepped forward. Captain Carter, you must understand. Our soulmate indicators have guided our people for millennia. Never, in all our history, has one activated for an outsider. Ethan shrugged. Cool. I get that. So what does it mean? Valeris hesitated. It means that you are bound to Commander Luraya. Ethan blinked. Then he laughed. Yeah. No, that doesn't make sense. The ambassador's expression remained serious. The indicator does not make mistakes. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Look, no offense, but Luraya looked at me like I just told her to eat a rock. I don't think she's interested. Valerius nodded. That is the problem. Ethan frowned. Explain. Valerius's expression darkened. If she refuses the bond, her mind will begin to break. Luraya's internal struggle. Luraya sat on the edge of her bed, gripping the edge of her sleeves. Her thoughts felt fractured, like something was pulling at her from the inside. She had trained for war, for diplomacy, for leadership. She had not trained for this. The idea of bonding with a human, with a species so alien to her people, was absurd. But no matter how much she tried to suppress it, she could feel the bond growing. A strange warmth in her chest, a faint awareness of Ethan Carter's presence, even though he was in another room. No, she whispered. I will not accept this. She forced herself to stand. She needed to go to the council. She needed to end this. Before it was too late. The council's harsh decision. Luraya stood before the Velmeri High Council, her body rigid with determination. The elder councilors regarded her with cautious expressions. Commander Velere, one of them spoke. Is it true? Has your indicator activated? For a human? Luraya nodded stiffly. It is a malfunction. A mistake. The council exchanged uncertain glances. The soulmate indicator does not malfunction, another councilor stated. Luraya's jaw tightened. Then it must be removed. A sharp silence filled the chamber. Removing a soulmate crystal was unheard of. It was dangerous. The bond was already forming. Severing it could lead to permanent damage. The council leader, Elder Vena, leaned forward. Commander, if you sever the bond, you may lose your telepathic abilities. Luraya hesitated. Velmeri relied on their mental connections. Without them, she would be isolated, cut off. But the alternative, bonding with a human, she refused to accept that fate. "I do not care," she said firmly. "Remove it." The council exchanged glances. Then, after a long silence, Vena nodded. "So be it." Ethan Carter just became a target. Meanwhile, Ethan paced in his room, feeling restless. Something wasn't right. Even without their fancy telepathic abilities, he could feel it. Then, his communicator buzzed. A human officer, Lieutenant Mason, appeared on screen. "Sir, we have a situation." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What kind of situation?" Mason's face was grim. "Someone just put a kill order on you." Ethan froze. "What? Who?" Mason hesitated. "It came from inside the Velmeri government." Ethan's stomach tightened. This was bad. This was really bad. If the Velmeri saw him as a threat, this wasn't just about him anymore. This could mean war. And the only person who might be able to stop it was the woman trying to erase their bond, the bond that refused to break. Lyrea stood in the center of the ritual chamber, her hands clenched into fists. The air was cold, humming with an unnatural energy. Before her, a circle of elder priests chanted in low, rhythmic tones. The blue glow of their hands pulsed against the walls, forming intricate symbols of power. She had made her decision. She would sever the bond, even if it meant never connecting with anyone again, even if it meant losing a part of herself. This was the price she was willing to pay. Her people, her duty, they came first. And Ethan Carter? He was nothing to her, or at least, that's what she kept telling herself. Ethan's escape. Somewhere in the depths of the Velmeri capital, Ethan ran for his life. The city was beautiful, a masterpiece of floating platforms and shimmering walkways. But right now, it was a damn death trap. Behind him, 3 cloaked figures moved without sound, their curved daggers gleaming under the artificial moonlight. Velmeri assassins. And they were fast. Ethan rolled behind a pillar, gripping his side where one of them had grazed him. He tapped his communicator. "Mason, I could use some help." His lieutenant's voice crackled through. "We're trying, sir, but the council just locked down the spaceport. No one in, no one out." Ethan cursed. He was trapped. And if Lyrea went through with the ritual, he'd be more than trapped. He'd be erased from her mind forever. The ritual begins. Back in the chamber, Lyrea knelt on a floating stone platform, her heart pounding. The head priest raised his hands, his voice echoing. "Lyrea Velere, do you accept the severance?" She took a deep breath. Yes. A sharp pulse of energy shot through her body. Her soulmate crystal flared, burning hot against her skin. She gritted her teeth. The energy tightened around her mind, like invisible fingers trying to tear something loose. Her connection to Ethan Carter. And then, something went wrong. The bond fights back. The moment the priests pushed deeper into the ritual, Lyrea felt it. A voice, a presence, stronger than ever before. "Lyrea, stop." Ethan's voice. Inside her head, her eyes snapped open. This wasn't possible. The ritual was supposed to erase him from her mind, but instead, his presence was growing stronger. "Lyrea, can you hear me?" She gasped, gripping her head. This can't be happening. The priests muttered in confusion. The bond is resisting. This has never happened before. Then, everything exploded. The crystal's true power. Lyrea's soulmate crystal shattered. But instead of breaking, it reformed. Stronger, brighter. And suddenly, she saw him. Not through her eyes. Not through a screen. She was in his mind. She could feel his pain, his exhaustion. She could see what he saw. The assassins closing in. His pulse, his fear, his determination. Everything. "Lyrea." Ethan's voice was shaky but firm. "I don't know how, but I think you just linked us permanently." Her heart pounded. This wasn't just a bond anymore. This was something ancient, something lost to Velmeri history, something forbidden. And if the High Council found out, they would destroy them both. The decision that changed everything. Lyrea staggered to her feet, breaking the ritual circle. The priests gasped in horror. "What are you doing?" She ignored them. Instead, she focused on Ethan, on the link, and without thinking, she reached through it. "Run left," she whispered. Miles away, Ethan's eyes widened. "Lyrea, just do it." He obeyed, just as a dagger whizzed past where his head had been. His heart pounded. "Okay, what the hell is happening?" Lyrea took a shaky breath. "I don't know, but I think I can help you now." She felt his relief, and she hated that it made her chest feel warm. But there was no time for emotions, because now she had made her choice, and the High Council would never forgive her for it. The escape. The alarm sirens wailed across the Velmeri capital. Lyrea ran through the corridors of the temple, her heart pounding. She could still feel Ethan's presence in her mind, an impossible connection that should never have existed. The High Council would come for her now. She had defied tradition, defied the laws of her people. And worst of all, she didn't regret it. Not anymore. Because for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. Ethan's last stand. Miles away, Ethan Carter was out of time. The assassins had him cornered in a narrow alley, their curved daggers glowing with deadly blue light. He was out of ammo, outnumbered, and the Velmeri warriors didn't look interested in talking. "You do not belong here, human." The leader stepped forward, his blade hovering inches from Ethan's throat. Ethan exhaled. "I get that a lot." Then, suddenly, the assassin's hand froze midair. His entire body locked in place. The other warriors gasped in confusion. What sorcery is this? Ethan felt it. A surge of energy, a strange pulse inside his head. And then he heard her voice. "Duck." He didn't question it. He dropped, just as one of the assassins swung from behind. Ethan rolled to the side, grabbing the fallen enemy's blade. And in one swift motion, he turned the fight around. The assassins barely had time to react before Ethan took them down one by one. Precise, efficient, lethal. The last warrior staggered back, shaking. "Impossible. How did you?" Ethan twirled the dagger in his fingers, smirking. "I didn't. She did." Lyrea's awakening. Back in the temple, Lyrea stumbled against a wall, her breath ragged. She had just done something impossible. She had controlled someone without touching them. Her telepathic abilities had never been that strong. But now, it felt like she had unlocked something new, something dangerous. She clenched her fists. She needed to find Ethan, before the council did. The High Council's response. The Velmeri High Council stood in grim silence. They had watched everything. The severance ritual had failed. The human was still alive. And now, Lyrea had turned against them. The council leader, Elder Vena, spoke coldly. "She has chosen her fate. Activate the hunters." The room darkened, and somewhere, deep within the city, a hidden force awoke. The true enforcers of Velmeri law. The hunters, and their mission, to erase Lyrea and Ethan from existence. The reunion. Ethan sprinted through the neon-lit streets, his communicator buzzing. Lyrea's voice came through. "Carter, where are you?" "I'll give you a hint. I'm running for my damn life." She groaned. "Meet me at the docking station. We need to leave. Now." "Yeah, great idea. Just one problem." "What?" "The entire planet wants us dead." Before she could respond, a new voice cut in. A voice that made Lyrea's blood run cold. "Lyrea Velere, your treason ends here." She whipped around and came face to face with the hunters. The elite killers of Velmera. The hunters were not normal Velmeri. They were shadows in the Empire, trained for one purpose: to eliminate threats before they became unstoppable. And now, they saw her as that threat. "Surrender," the leader ordered, his voice like steel. "Come quietly, and we will make your death painless." Luraya's heartbeat pounded in her ears. The old her would have hesitated. The old her would have followed orders. But that Luraya, she was gone. Her soulmate crystal glowed fiercely, brighter than ever before. She could feel Ethan's presence through the bond. His adrenaline, his exhaustion, his determination. And for the first time in her life, she let the bond take over. She embraced it. Luraya lifted her hand. The air trembled. The hunters stepped back in shock. "Impossible. No Velmary has ever." Luraya's voice was calm. "You don't get to decide my fate anymore." Then, she unleashed her power. The fight for freedom. The air crackled with energy. Luraya stood in the center of the docking bay, her soulmate crystal burning like a star against her wrist. Across from her, the hunters stood in rigid formation, silent, waiting. They were not ordinary soldiers. They were executioners, and they had come to erase her from existence. Ethan Carter, still catching his breath, took one look at them and muttered, "You guys really don't do second chances, huh?" The lead hunter stepped forward, his voice like cut glass. "There is no place for you here anymore, Commander Velray." Luraya's fingers tightened into fists. She had been one of them once, trained with them, fought beside them. But now, she was the target. "I don't need a place here," she said coldly. "I'm making my own." And then they attacked. The unleashing. Luraya moved without thinking. The bond inside her was alive now, surging through her veins like liquid fire. For the first time in her life, she didn't hold back. A hunter lunged. She caught his wrist midair, twisted. He crashed to the ground. Another aimed a shock dart at Ethan. She flicked her hand, and the dart reversed in midair, striking the attacker instead. Ethan barely dodged a plasma blade swinging for his head. "You know," he grunted, grabbing a fallen hunter's weapon. "For people who think we're not soulmates, they sure want us dead." Luraya sent a shockwave through the ground, sending 3 hunters flying. "They don't fear you," she said. "They fear what we might become." And now, she understood why. The secret of the bond. As the last hunter hit the ground, Luraya felt a shift. A memory that wasn't hers. A hidden chamber. Ancient texts. Velmary and humans, standing together. The council, burning the records, erasing the past. Her breath caught. The bond between Velmary and humans wasn't new. It had happened before. And the council had buried it. "Ethan," she whispered, "we were never supposed to meet." He wiped blood from his lip. "Yeah, kinda figured that when they tried to kill me." Luraya shook her head. "No, I mean, our species were connected. A long time ago. They erased it, buried the truth." Ethan frowned. "You're saying we were always meant to?" The docking bay shook violently. Outside, an entire fleet of Velmary warships had begun descending. The High Council wasn't waiting anymore. They weren't sending assassins this time. They were going to destroy everything. The final stand. Luraya turned to Ethan, her voice firm. "Get to the ship. I'll hold them off." Ethan stared at her like she was insane. "No, absolutely not. I'm not leaving you here, To." She grabbed his wrist. The bond surged, a pulse of light rippling between them. For a moment, just a moment, he could feel what she felt. Her fear, her determination, her love. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I have to do this. If I don't stop them here, they'll never stop hunting us." Ethan gritted his teeth. Then he did something she didn't expect. He pulled her in and kissed her. The universe stopped. For the first time, she felt completely whole. When he pulled back, he smirked. "Then let's stop them together." The impossible happens. The docking bay doors burst open. A full squad of Velmarian forcers charged in. Luraya lifted her hands. Ethan raised his stolen weapon. For a brief moment, it looked like they would fall. Then, the entire room flashed white. Ethan and Luraya vanished. The soldiers stumbled back in shock. They hadn't been killed. They had teleported. Without a ship. Without technology. Just disappeared. The galaxy's most wanted. Somewhere in deep space, a flash of golden light appeared. Luraya and Ethan dropped onto solid ground, gasping for air. They weren't dead. They weren't in Velmari space. They had escaped. What was that? Ethan panted. Luraya touched her wrist, where the Soulmate crystal glowed brighter than ever. That, she breathed, was just the beginning. Because now, they weren't just fugitives. They were evidence that the Velmari Council had lied, that their bond was more powerful than anyone imagined, and that the galaxy would never be the same again. The truth that shook the stars. The universe had changed. Luraya and Ethan Carter had defied the High Council. They had unlocked a forgotten power, and now, they were the most wanted fugitives in the galaxy. But before the Council could erase them, before the Velmari fleet could track them down, Luraya and Ethan needed answers. They needed to know why their bond existed. And deep in the void of space, an ancient signal was calling to them. A signal that had been waiting for centuries. A signal that whispered, "You are not the first." The journey into the unknown. Luraya sat in the cockpit of their stolen ship, her mind still reeling from what had happened. She looked down at her wrist, at the Soulmate crystal that had nearly killed her when she tried to sever it. The glow was different now. Stronger. More. Alive. Ethan, sitting across from her, sighed. Okay, let's list out the problems. 1. We are currently fugitives wanted by an entire empire. 2. We somehow teleported across space without a ship. 3. There's an old signal repeating a message in your language that you refuse to tell me about. Luraya hesitated. Because I don't understand it either. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Well, that's comforting. She turned to the ship's console, activating the signal tracker. Whatever this is, it's calling to us. Ethan exhaled. Then I guess we're answering. The lost world. The signal led them to a dead system. No planets. No colonies. Just a single abandoned station, floating in the endless dark. As their ship docked, Luraya felt something deep in her bones. A presence, like she had been here before, even though she knew she hadn't. Ethan stepped onto the platform, his eyes scanning the ruins. I don't like this. Luraya touched a nearby control panel, and the entire station roared to life. Lights flickered. Systems rebooted. And then, a hologram appeared. A Velmari woman stood before them, frozen in time, her eyes pierced through the centuries. Her words sent a chill down Luraya's spine. If you are seeing this, then history is repeating itself. You are not the first human Velmari bond. You are the last hope of a broken prophecy. Luraya staggered back. Ethan stared. Well, he muttered, that's a new one. The Forgotten War. The hologram continued. Long ago, our species and humanity were not enemies. We were connected. Images flickered, ancient Velmari and humans, side by side, fighting together, living together. But the High Council feared what our bond could become. They erased the records, destroyed those who defied them. And when the last bonded pair tried to unite our people, the Council executed them. Luraya's breath hitched. She looked at Ethan, and she saw the realization in his eyes too. They weren't just an accident. Their connection was proof of something much bigger. Something the High Council had been hiding for centuries. And now, the Council would do anything to keep that truth buried, even if it meant destroying them both. The betrayal that shattered the sky. Before Luraya could react, a blinding explosion rocked the station. Alarms screamed. The ship's systems crashed. And through the viewport, she saw them, the Velmera war fleet. They had been waiting, tracking them. And now, they were here to finish what they started. The comms crackled to life. A familiar voice filled the room, one that made Luraya's stomach turn. Luraya Velere, surrender yourself, and the human will be spared. Luraya stiffened, because the voice belonged to her mentor, the one person who had trained her, the one person she had trusted. Commander Erix, she whispered. Her former mentor was leading the hunt, and now she had a choice to make, the choice that would decide everything. Ethan grabbed her arm. Don't even think about it. Luraya's hands trembled. She could see the warships preparing to fire. If she surrendered, Ethan would live, but their bond would be erased. She would be erased. But if they fought, they had one chance. A single, impossible move. Ethan saw it too. We teleport again, he said, wherever we went last time. Let's do it again. Luraya clenched her jaw. The bond was alive inside her. She could feel the energy building. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every Velmerian human who had been erased. This was about the truth. She looked at Ethan. And then, she took his hand. The fleet opened fire, and in the blink of an eye, they vanished. The rebirth of a lost future. The universe shifted. 1 second, Luraya and Ethan were about to be obliterated by the High Council's fleet. The next, they were somewhere else, a place beyond time and memory. Their bodies felt weightless, their minds overwhelmed by a sudden flood of emotions, memories, but not their own. Then, reality snapped back into place, and they found themselves standing on solid ground. Not in deep space, not in the ruins of the old station, but in a place they weren't supposed to exist. The cradle of the forgotten. The one place the Velmeri High Council had tried to erase from history itself. The planet that shouldn't exist. Luraya stumbled forward, her breathing heavy. The world around them was impossibly ancient. Massive temples of crystalline stone rose around them, covered in glowing symbols that pulsed with golden energy. Ethan, still recovering from the teleport, blinked and muttered, "Okay, I've seen some weird things in my life, but this is beyond impossible." Luraya couldn't answer, because in her heart, she already knew what this place was. This was where the first Velmeri human bonds had begun. This was where her ancestors had tried to unite the two species, and this was where the council had slaughtered them all. Her fingers tightened into fists. For so long, she had believed the High Council's lies, that the bond was unnatural, that humans and Velmeri were never meant to be together. But now she saw the truth carved into the very walls of this place. They had been connected once, and the council had destroyed it out of fear. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You feel it too, don't you?" Luraya swallowed hard. This was our home once, and now it was the key to everything. The Guardian awakens. Before they could process it further, the ground shook. A deep rumble echoed through the temple ruins. Ethan immediately raised his weapon. "Please tell me this place doesn't have some kind of ancient security system." Luraya didn't have an answer, but a moment later she did, because something moved in the shadows. A massive stone-like figure emerged from the temple's core. Its body was humanoid, but its form was wrapped in golden energy, shifting like liquid metal. And then it spoke. "You are the bonded." Its voice wasn't just sound, it was felt inside their minds. Luraya stiffened. "Who? What are you?" The being took a slow step forward, examining them. "I am the last guardian of the Velmeri's forgotten past. I have waited for your return." Ethan frowned. "Waited? For us?" The guardian's eyes glowed. "Not for you, but for the ones who would rekindle the bond." Luraya's breath caught. "You mean we were destined to be here?" "No. You were chosen." Ethan and Luraya exchanged glances. "Because that That was somehow worse. The power they were never supposed to have. The guardian raised its massive hand, and suddenly, the walls of the temple came alive. Images flashed before them. Scenes from thousands of years ago. Velmeri and humans together. A world where their bond had once been celebrated. And then, the betrayal. The council's rise to power. The massacre of those who had bonded. And the final, chilling prophecy. One day, the bond will awaken again. And those who carry it will have the power to reshape the stars. Luraya's blood ran cold. The council hadn't just been afraid of human Velmeri bonds. They had been afraid of what those bonds could become. Something beyond politics, beyond war. Something that could change the universe itself. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temples. Okay, so let me get this straight. We didn't just accidentally fall into some forbidden romance. We're apparently the center of some ancient prophecy that could rewrite reality. The Guardian nodded. Yes. Ethan groaned. Fantastic. Just what I needed today. The final warning. Luraya turned to the Guardian, her voice steady. If the High Council feared this power, then why didn't they just destroy it? The Guardian's expression darkened. Because they could not. It turned toward them fully, its energy growing brighter. The bond is not just connection. It is not just love. It is power. A force woven into the very fabric of life itself. And now, it has awakened in you. Luraya felt it. The warmth in her chest. The unbreakable link between her and Ethan. Something ancient was stirring inside her. Ethan tensed. So what do we do now? The Guardian looked up toward the stars. Run. Luraya and Ethan's blood froze. The council knows where you are. And they are coming to erase you, just like they erased all the others before you. The sky burns. At that moment, a deafening roar echoed across the sky. Velmeri warships tore through the clouds. The fleet had arrived. And leading them, Commander Irix, Luraya's former mentor, now her executioner. His voice boomed through the comms. Luraya Velere, surrender the human. Surrender the bond, or we will burn this planet to ash. The Guardian turned to them. Your choice is simple. Flee or fight. Luraya's heart pounded. This wasn't just about her and Ethan anymore. This was about the truth. About every Velmeri and human who had been denied their history. And she was done running. She looked at Ethan. Are you ready? He smirked, grabbing his weapon. You already know the answer. And together, they turned to face the fleet.